A drunken tourist, a war hero, and a knife sounds like the start of a bad joke, right? Except this joke ended with flashing lights, a viral video, and a crowd that couldn't look away. One man's arrogance met a Marine's resolve, and trust me, the fallout wasn't pretty. But let's rewind to where it all began. The streets of New Orleans thrummed with life. Neon lights flickered above cobblestones slick with humidity, jazz spilled from crowded clubs, and the laughter of tourists echoed over the din of clinking glasses. Amid this vibrant chaos, Harry Rose, a 91-year-old World War II veteran, sat in his usual spot at a small cafe under the open sky. For years, his Saturday routine had been simple: coffee, toast, and a quiet moment to observe the lively world around him. Tonight, however, the familiar routine was about to take an unwelcome turn. Bradley Thornton burst onto the scene like an uninvited guest at a family dinner. A walking advertisement for poor decisions, he was tall, drunk, and impossible to ignore. His Hawaiian shirt was loud enough to give anyone a headache, and his wobbling gait hinted he'd had 1 or 5 too many drinks. His laugh, boisterous and obnoxious, drowned out the smooth jazz wafting from a nearby speaker. Spotting Harry, Bradley staggered over, grinning like he was the funniest guy in the room. "Hey, old-timer," he hollered, swaying as he grabbed onto a nearby chair for balance. "You just sit here every weekend staring at people, or did you forget where you were going?" Harry glanced up, his weathered face calm, his voice even. "Just enjoying my coffee, son." That might have ended it for someone sober, but Bradley wasn't sober. He threw his head back, laughing loud enough to turn heads. "Son? Oh, that's rich. You think your gray hair makes you king of the sidewalk? Newsflash, Gramps, I'm twice the man you ever were." Nearby diners began to murmur. A couple at the next table exchanged uneasy glances, and a server retreated into the cafe, not wanting to get involved. It was the kind of tension everyone felt, but no one wanted to break. Harry, however, didn't flinch. He kept his gaze steady, his silence unshakable. But Bradley took silence as a challenge. "Hey, don't ignore me, statue," Bradley snarled, his tone shifting from mockery to aggression. Without warning, he reached across the table, grabbed Harry's empty coffee cup, and hurled it to the ground. The ceramic shattered on the pavement with a sharp crack that seemed to silence the entire cafe. "Guess who's cleaning that up?" Bradley sneered, his grin as smug as ever. And that's when Marcus Hill appeared. At 6'3", with a frame built for trouble, Marcus was the cafe's security guard. A former Marine, he had a presence that could quiet a room with a single glance. His ice-cold gaze locked onto Bradley as he stepped forward. "That's enough," Marcus said, his voice low but commanding. Bradley turned to face him, his drunken bravado undeterred. "Oh, look, the bouncer thinks he's a cop," he scoffed, spreading his arms theatrically. "What are you gonna do, big guy? Write me a ticket?" Marcus didn't blink. His expression stayed calm, his stance steady, but his presence radiated a quiet threat. Bradley, emboldened by the alcohol coursing through his veins, laughed and turned back to Harry. His hand shot up, fingers curling into a fist, ready to strike. In that moment, everything changed. Bradley's fist flew toward Harry in a clumsy arc, but the 91-year-old veteran wasn't about to be caught off guard. With a swift step back, he dodged the punch as if it were nothing. The crowd gasped, a ripple of shock moving through the onlookers. Marcus Hill, watching from just a few steps away, lost his faint smile. His face turned sharp and focused as he stepped forward with deliberate, controlled movements. "All right, buddy," Marcus said, his voice calm but commanding as he grabbed Bradley's arm. "This isn't a fight club. Let's walk this off before you do something you really regret." For a moment, it looked like Bradley might comply, but his pride wouldn't let him. He jerked his arm free with a grunt, his bloodshot eyes glaring at Marcus. Then, with a drunken determination, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small knife. The crowd let out a collective gasp, the light from the blade catching in the street lamps. "You think you can tell me what to do?" Bradley spat, brandishing the knife in Marcus's direction. His voice, loud and aggressive, barely masked the fear lurking beneath his bravado. "You don't run me, pal." Marcus didn't even blink. His eyes stayed locked on Bradley, his voice cold and steady. "You got no idea who you're messing with, kid. Put it down before this gets ugly." Bradley hesitated for half a second, but the alcohol surging through him drowned out any logic. He took a shaky step forward, waving the blade. That was all Marcus needed. In a blur of movement, the knife was gone, disarmed with a precision that seemed effortless. The blade clattered to the pavement, and before Bradley could react, Marcus twisted his arm behind his back and swept his legs out from under him. The drunken man hit the ground with a thud, and Marcus pressed a knee firmly into his back, holding him in place. The crowd erupted, some in gasps, others in cheers. Phones were out, recording the scene as Bradley squirmed and cursed under Marcus's weight. "Let me up," Bradley growled, his voice muffled by the pavement. His bravado was quickly fading, replaced by frustration and humiliation. Marcus leaned down slightly, his voice low but sharp. "Relax, tough guy. You're not going anywhere." Harry stepped forward, moving with quiet confidence. His weathered face was calm, but his eyes carried a weight that silenced the murmurs of the crowd. He stopped a few feet away from Bradley, his voice firm but steady as he spoke. "Son, you're playing with fire. Maybe it's time to stop and think about what you're doing before you burn yourself and everyone around you." The weight of Harry's words hung in the air, heavy and unavoidable. The crowd stilled, the chaos of the moment replaced by an uneasy calm. Bradley's breathing slowed as he lay pinned to the ground, his eyes darting between Marcus and Harry. Whether the message sank in was a question no one could yet answer. The crowd thickened, whispers and camera flashes creating a tense hum in the air. People jostled to get a closer look, some murmuring in awe at Marcus's calm dominance, others trading disbelieving glances as Bradley writhed on the ground. Marcus didn't budge, keeping his knee firm on Bradley's back, his composure unshaken. "Keep still," Marcus ordered, his voice low and firm. Bradley groaned, but didn't have much of a choice. The reality of the situation was beginning to dawn on him, but his pride wouldn't let him go quietly. Then, the distant wail of sirens broke through the chatter. The sound grew louder, and within moments, a squad car screeched to a halt nearby. Two officers stepped out, their presence immediately silencing the crowd. The taller of the two, a seasoned officer with a commanding presence, scanned the scene, his eyes landing on Marcus and Bradley. But it was the other man, a younger officer, fresh-faced and eager, who froze mid-step, his gaze locking on Harry. "No way," the younger cop muttered, nudging his partner. "That's Harry Rose, the vet from the papers." The taller officer paused, his eyes narrowing as he took a closer look. Recognition dawned, and his expression softened. "You're kidding. That's really him?" "It is," the younger cop said, his voice tinged with awe. Their exchange didn't go unnoticed. The crowd stilled, the buzz of conversation replaced by a hushed reverence. People began to murmur, their eyes shifting between Harry and the officers. It wasn't every day you found yourself in the presence of someone whose name carried weight far beyond the city limits. Even Bradley seemed to catch on, his drunken bravado giving way to something closer to panic. His head turned toward Harry, his mouth opening as if to speak. But no words came. Whatever fight he had left evaporated. Marcus finally eased off, grabbing Bradley by the collar and hauling him to his feet. The officers moved in quickly, snapping the cuffs on his wrists before he could protest. The younger officer gave Bradley a hard look. "You really had to pick this guy to mess with tonight? Bad call, man." Bradley sputtered something unintelligible, but his voice was drowned out by the sound of the crowd starting to clap. Phones were raised, capturing the final moments as the officers marched Bradley toward the squad car. His head hung low, and the swagger from earlier was nowhere to be found. Marcus watched him go, his arms crossed. As Bradley was loaded into the car, Marcus called out after him, his tone cool and sharp. "You could have ended this night a lot differently, pal. Guess you'll be thinking about that for a while." The squad car pulled away, its lights flashing as it disappeared down the street. Slowly, the crowd began to disperse, the excitement fading into scattered conversations. But the weight of what had just happened lingered. Harry, who had been quietly watching from the side, returned to his table. He looked down at his coffee, untouched and now stone cold. With a faint smile, he muttered to himself, "Well, that's that. Coffee's ruined, though." Marcus approached, his expression softening as he looked at Harry. "You good?" Harry nodded, his calm demeanor unbroken. "I've seen worse. You did good, son." "Just doing my job," Marcus replied, his tone as steady as ever. He gave Harry a nod and turned back to his post, slipping into the crowd as if nothing had happened. By morning, the scene was everywhere. Videos taken by bystanders went viral, the clips showing every moment, from Bradley's outburst to Marcus's swift takedown to the police recognizing Harry Rose, the legendary veteran. The internet was relentless. Memes popped up mocking Bradley's arrogance, hashtags celebrated Marcus as a local hero, and countless comments poured in, praising his composure and Harry's dignity. But for Marcus and Harry, the spectacle meant little. Marcus returned to his routine, knowing he'd done more than protect a cafe patron. He'd safeguarded a legacy. And Harry? He simply went back to his Saturday ritual, sipping coffee and watching the world, knowing there were still people out there who stood up for what was right. What would you have done in Marcus's place? Do you think he handled the situation the right way? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know if you or someone you know has ever experienced something similar. Don't forget to like this story if it resonated with you and spread the word by sharing it. This story was created to shine a light on the challenges we face and to inspire kindness and justice in our everyday lives. Together, we can help make the world a better place. Your opinion matters. Let's keep the conversation going.